Hi Quant Platform community. Thank you very much for being here with us today again, and thank you very much for all your support and all the great questions we got for this Ask Me Anything session. And thank you for continuing the journey with us after these really intensive months, I must say. So there has been a lot of work with the preparation of the proof of concept, with the whole restoration process, and also the product development. For today's Ask Me Anything session, as usual, the team has put all the relevant questions in little sections for me so we can go through each topic. So I got a really nice pre-compiled list of all the constructive questions. Thank you very much for that. So let's dive straight in. So first is the development section and the development and product related questions. Here the most important one is QVM. So as you have seen, we have recently released the documentation and official support for the JavaScript language, which is really fascinating for me because it's literally the most popular language on planet Earth with more than 10 million developers. And this means that by supporting JavaScript, so the majority of developers are already able to start building for Quant Platform. Although, as you can see in the previous videos, and also if you check out the documentation online, you will see that QVM is in a state where it works as a layer 2 execution engine on the Ethereum testnet Sepolia, but developers can already start experimenting with it, building smart contracts, deploying them, calling their functions, retrieving data, writing and reading from to and from the storage. So pretty much all the aspects of QVM are covered. So yes, as I said, JavaScript is in particular a huge milestone and a big step ahead because it's literally the most popular programming language on this planet. And so yes, here is the first one. What does implementing of JavaScript mean for Quant and compared to other blockchains? So continuing what I just said, this is the biggest step forward because now we enable the majority of developers who are not familiar with blockchain at all to finally be able to code in a programming language which they are already familiar with, which they have practiced and mastered for the last 10-20 years possibly. And this gives also a great confidence boost and a productivity boost to these developers because finally they have the chance to enter the blockchain development space without too much overhead. So we are really working on what I always said, that we make it easier for developers to jump into this space by lowering the entry barriers. And we did just that with JavaScript, and we'll do so with many more languages in the pipeline. So yes, compared to other blockchains, as for the second part of the question, on most of the blockchains, you as a developer, you are forced to learn a brand new language, mostly Solidity, or for example, again, a brand new exotic language like Teal for Algorand. So you must learn something you didn't know before just to obtain a very domain-specific knowledge, which you might be or might not be able to use in the future. So this is something which is cutting out a lot of developers. So compared to other blockchains, Quant gives you the opportunity to reuse your existing knowledge, try out blockchain, and then decide whether this is something for you or not as a developer without risking any of your precious time, learning time as a developer. So next question, I saw Brendan H, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, the founder of JavaScript, commenting under your post on Twitter. Congratulations. Are there any blockchains where developers can code smart contracts in JavaScript? So yes and no. The thing with JavaScript is that you will find that many blockchains support JavaScript, but let's divide two things apart. So one thing is that there are SDKs, so-called software development kits for various blockchains, many blockchains. These are written in JavaScript. This means that you can write software which is able to interact with the chain in the JavaScript language. So to give you an example, which is maybe the most popular thing on Ethereum and Binance Smart Chain, the Uniswap and PancakeSwap applications are written in JavaScript. That doesn't mean that you could write smart contracts in JavaScript for Ethereum or Binance Smart Chain. This means that you can write the front end, the user-facing interface by using JavaScript, but you cannot write contracts in JavaScript. This is a huge difference because, again, especially these two examples which I just gave, these are applications which handle money directly, so you can execute various kinds of trades, and that part which is responsible for money transfers is still written in Solidity. So that's the more crucial part of the whole application, because you want to aim for language you are confident writing code in to be able to define the rules, the execution rules of those set financial transfers. And this is not the case with other blockchains, like I said, with the Ethereum and Binance Smart Chain, for example. The SDKs, and this is often misleading, that there are SDK software development kits where you can use JavaScript, but not to write smart contracts, just to interact with them. And also for the second part of the question, yes, there are other chains which support JavaScript, but only a subset of it. So these are mostly WebAssembly based chains. And it's like, you know, like saying that, yes, you can write a novel, you can write a book in the English language, but you can only use 20 words of the English language. So it's not quite the same. So that is a limited subset of the language, and yes, it means that you can reuse a lot of language constructs, but not quite the same environment that most developers are already familiar with. Next question. When are smart contracts standards coming? So something like QRC20, QRC 721. Would love to start developing apps using them, but there is no example. So yes, these are yet to be written. So currently the documentation provides all the components which are required for writing these kinds of standards. So in the current examples, all primitives of smart contract interactions are written like for example, writing and reading from storage, outputting data to standard output, outputting data to standard error to indicate an error if there is anything in the smart contract happening. And from these puzzle pieces, building blocks, one is able to construct these standards. Obviously, we will supply all these examples ourselves, but that is not the priority. So just to be clear, the only priority is to reach the publishing of the private blockchain network and the mainnet this year. So until then, really, we will release the supporting documentation for all languages. There are later questions about this, so I'll get into that in detail. But our laser sharp focus is reaching mainnet definitely until the end of this year, which will enable us to do a lot more, but I don't want to spoil anything. But yes, we will of course pay attention to be supportive as much as we can, but it's also important to be understood that where we need to focus our development resources. Okay, so the next question is targeted towards the quantum computing and quantum cryptography. Yeah, I saw, so this is the next question. I saw that NIST recommends crystal dilithium as the primary algorithm for quantum resistant signatures. The OneQuant platform has chosen before and is using through QuantXLink. what if NIST didn't pick the right algorithm? Could you switch to a new algorithm then? So the answer is yes, of course, we could still alter. So if you take a look at the audit which was conducted on how the whole X-Link protocol works, so how this cross-signing architecture, so by signing your post-quantum public key with your elliptic curve, so standard crypto public key and vice versa, so how this cross-signing is implemented. There you can also discover in the protocol that there's a version indicator. So we went with Crystals Dilithium because we believed that is the most sane approach out of them, and which is the most suitable for this application field. And yes, luckily it turned out that we were right. But in case we weren't right, we could still release a version bump of the X-Link protocol to also offer a different scheme, signature scheme to be chosen. This is important because although NIST has now publicly recommended this kind of algorithm, I mean the Crystals Dilithium, which we are using, even it could turn out in 1 year that there is some serious flaw which no one really noticed back then, I mean like right now, and there needs to be an upgrade to be done, then yes, we could still do that. So unless the discovered issue would be fatal and there would be no transition window, we can migrate anything. It would happen on the same principle as we included X-Link to enable the transition from elliptic curve cryptography to post-quantum cryptography. There would be just the next step, but we can make this bridge through X-Link, so the protocol is capable of that. Next question. I saw some users making fun of Quan that the quantum resistant project was hacked. Any comments on this? Yeah, sure. So first of all, nothing related to quantum cryptography was hacked at all. So currently those kinds of hacks are not even feasible with the current hardware level, and it has nothing to do with the that aspect at all actually. So what happened is that there was a vulnerability disclosed in another software which we used a derivative of, which was uncovered in September, but there were 2 internal checks done internally. So we released the whole fact sheet of the events, what happened internally. It's a bit technical, although we aimed, and I did the proofreading on the document to ensure that it's mostly understandable to even non-tech people. But for those who really feel lost reading that document, what I can say that all our partners, I mean really high-level partners who are cooperating with Quan at the moment, obviously we had immediately discussions with their development department and security departments, and they understood what happened. They knew it couldn't have been sanely mitigated, and you know, there are just times when these things happen. I mean, if we look back, there were even hacks on Bitcoin, Ethereum, you name it. These were also tens of millions of dollars worth of hacks back then, so that was a much more severe amount at that time. And you know, what really defines the stability of a project and how you can really feel that you can depend on such a platform is the longevity, and that you know, when even there are hard times and unfortunate events like this happen, that they still stand up, they correct everything, and they keep on going. So this is what really differentiates failure from success in the long run, and this is all what you should be looking out for, and this is true for all the projects out there. If you take a look, I bet that there aren't many, if any, projects out there which didn't have any kind of cryptography or security issues ever. And also, again, it's important to highlight that not a single component of Quant's infrastructure was part of this problem. The whole problem was based on an external piece of software used for the generation of a particular wallet, which deployed the bridge smart contract. So it's not related to Quan, it's not related to any software component we developed, and definitely not related to the quantum resistant algorithms we develop and use. For the next one, I am wondering about the side channel attack used on Kyber Crystal. Can it be used against Crystal's dilithium? And can you describe the security used to safeguard implementations of Crystal's dilithium used for Quant platform? I ask because any algorithm can and will be inevitably have many non-secure broken implementations. It's understood that this doesn't mean that the algorithm itself is broken or that there is an issue with your implementation. So yes, this is a very good question, super complex one. I'm pretty sure that most of you don't understand. And what is even a side channel attack? A side channel attack is, yeah, exactly as the question and the itself describes. Again, super good question, that it doesn't mean that the algorithm is broken. It means that the implementation is broken. Like, how should I bring a good example? Like, the algorithm says that you can multiply numbers by adding the numbers together as many times as the multiplicand. But let's say that so this is the definition, this is the algorithm to be implemented, right? And then the implementation, for example, doesn't include the chance of negative numbers in the implementation and doesn't account for the possibility that the multiplier might be negative, and in case of a negative number, that case is not handled, for example. So this is not fault of the algorithm, this is fault of the implementation. And side channel attacks mean that such tiny uncovered fields are being exploited. So in such cases, the algorithm is not at fault, the implementation is. And the answer for that is that time will tell. So I'm really speaking the truth here, and if we look back, mega tech companies, I can bring a really lot of examples, even car manufacturing companies, Sony financial institutes, they made mistakes in their implementations, and yeah, that has definitely cost billions of dollars. So yes, these things happen. And as for this particular side channel attack as related to Kyber Crystal, whether it applies to Crystal's dilithium, I've read this paper. It's quite theoretical, although, so I don't really see this exploited in practice yet, but yes, it could be possible. So the general rule, and this is not just true for Kyber Crystal or Crystal's dilithium or any other RSA, elliptic curve, you name it, algorithm, the general rule is to have publicly vetted algorithms and the implementations, and this is why we said that we intend to release all the source code and make Quant platforms components public domain, and not necessarily public domain, sorry, that's a licensing question, but to release the source code for anyone out there to be able to verify and audit its contents, because the more eyes check it, obviously the greater chance that in case there is anything wrong with it, it can be caught in time. But in reality, I wish I could say anything more assuring, but if we take a look back of 20 years, there are no guarantees whatsoever in terms of side channel attacks. It's really, really hard to spot those ahead of time. So next one, how does your blockchain algorithm address the potential security risks that arise from quantum attacks on consensus protocols? Okay, so, well, blockchain algorithms. So a blockchain consists of many algorithms. So hashing algorithms, digital signature algorithms, consensus algorithms. I'll assume that you mean consensus algorithm in this case, because the second part of the question is that arise from quantum attacks on consensus protocols. Well, I am not aware of any kind of quantum related attack on consensus protocols. So quantum computing attacks mostly aim at forging the digital signatures and recovering the private key, but specifically for consensus protocols, especially for proof of work, there aren't many, or actually none, because it's not feasible, because that would require tampering with the hashing algorithm output. What I can think of is that proof of stake might be affected, for example, because there is elliptic curve signatures used for that purpose, but that would be the least in the row. So when that fails, already many components have failed before, so it's not practical at all. So if you have a quantum computer capable, or you have an access to a quantum computer capable of breaking elliptic curve signatures, you wouldn't aim for the consensus protocol, so you would just simply forge signatures of wallets which have many tokens inside. So it's much simpler, easier, and it's quicker. So no, it doesn't make any sense to attack consensus protocols with a quantum algorithm directly. So yeah, about consensus, let's head over to proof of randomness. We have a couple questions there as well. So how do you know that proof of randomness and green mining are gonna work on mainnet when nothing is not launched at the moment? So yes, I mean, there are principles, there are formulas, tests. Obviously a real life test is always different than a testing environment, but this is like asking, how did Satoshi know that the proof of work thing is gonna work? So the answer is that we will see. We are confident that it will work because all our calculations and tests show that this is feasible. But yes, there is no 100% guarantee for anything in this life, if you ask me, but we are pretty confident that it's gonna work. So next question, what are the plans for testing proof of randomness? I had heard this will be a part of a beta mainnet, but wouldn't this testing need to be done well before that? Of course we are doing internal testing before the mainnet beta, but yes, the mainnet beta will be, there is a huge difference between a testing environment and the mainnet beta, although both are kind of a test release. Of course the mainnet beta will be already super robust for testing, because that's actually rolling out the implementation to the general public. But just to give you an example, before the mainnet beta we can only test on hardware which we and our partners possess, so we can set up global deployments that mostly that would be in data centers. So just you can imagine that when you do a real global rollout, I mean just a test rollout internally to evaluate the parameters, what we really do is that we really spin up a bunch of cloud computers in different providers' clouds, in our partners on-premises data centers, and those are infrastructure and high industrial level hardware. In reality, when people start running nodes on their home computers, on PCs, personal computers with residential internet connections, that could be a different thing because of the latency, because of the hardware's nodes come and go. So in a cloud you have a server that's mostly running their SLAs, so service level agreements in place, which guarantee like 99.99% at least uptime, whereas a home computer of a user might turn off the next minute anytime because his electricity is gone, because his internet connection broke, because he forgot to pay his bills, or because his hard drive crashed. So it's a much more volatile environment, I mean a real testing environment. So this will be really interesting. Of course we account for these kind of failures, and we will also do testing with randomly turning off cloud-based machines. But again, after more than 20 years in this industry, you can never mimic real life, no matter how precise testing you do. So real life deployment is always different than a testing environment. Okay. So yes, and also about the hybrid implementation, it's also super important to have the mainnet beta running as well, because that will enable the hybrid operation mode, which most blockchains either don't have or don't support natively, just with a bit of hacking around. And this is like the best operation mode ever, because companies can decide what kind of data they want to keep private and operate on their private networks, and which parts of the data might be also recorded onto the public blockchain. And this enables high throughput because of the TPS is much higher in case of the private network, and also full trust because all the data is fingerprints of the data is recorded on the public chain, which means that it's not temperable in the private environment either. So it's literally the best of both worlds. And this kind of mode only works if the mainnet is already alive. So yes, this is also an important factor why we must release the mainnet as soon as possible. Okay, so next question is about the private public network. Will the private Quam blockchain be available for everyone or just businesses and developers? And more specifically, what would be the restrictions to use the private blockchain after the release in H1 2023? So, well, first part of the question, will the private Quam blockchain be available for everyone or just businesses and developers? Yes, but how shall I put it? I mean, a blockchain, so currently Ethereum source code is also available to everyone. The question is whether an average user can do anything at all with it. I mean, the answer is both yes and no. So I mean, to a non-tech person, to a non-developer, the availability doesn't really mean much, because, well, they can't develop anything for it. So currently, I would say this is the same with any other blockchain out there. Yes, it is available, but only businesses and developers can make practical use of it. So for the first part, it's a yes and no. It's available, but I don't really see any use case for regular users who are not developers or don't own a business. And for the second question, more specifically, what would be the restrictions to use private blockchain after the release in H1 2023? There wouldn't be any restrictions at all. So reflecting back to the first part of the question, it's available to anyone. So whoever is able to build for it, either directly as a developer or to hire developers to build on top of it, it will be available free of charge and without limitations. Next question, when will the testnet arrive? If we get to the public testnet, how long is it roughly from there to the mainnet? What tasks are left from there? How much of technical leap is to move from the testnet to mainnet? So we will release the testnet again with the private blockchain launch, which is H1 as said above. And how much technical leap is to move from testnet to mainnet? Well, the consensus algorithm is different, so the network model as well, based on that. Yeah, so we must have mainnet running definitely until the end of this year. So that's all I can say for now. Next question is related to LibraScan, whether it's still in the pipeline. And yes, definitely it will be published this spring. I think I have disclosed in the previous Ask Me Anything that the development of LibraScan is ongoing. Yes, we are really finishing the end of it with a partner. As I think I also said in the previous video, we had to get some external resources to speed that up a bit. So, but yes, it's on right track and it will be published this spring. So going to the next section of questions, which is about the partnership and Alpine in particular. So the first question goes, Johan said when he announced that the Quam partner would be globally famous, how many people worldwide know about Alpine Esports? So yes, correct. I said that the partner would be globally famous. We have more partners in the pipeline as well. And about Alpine Esports in particular, I'm super excited about Alpine Esport as our first great and worldwide known partner, because they are a daughter company subsidiary of the Renault Nissan Mitsubishi Alliance, which is literally the biggest car manufacturer, car alliance on the planet. And about esports, not many people know. So this is not about digital racing games. So I've attended the event at the factory in England, Enstone, where also the Formula One cars are being manufactured, and they have this dedicated space where they are ramping up the esports section too. And of course it's about gaming, but they are gaining so many insights and useful data they are using in modeling the real world racing and development of the real world racing cars. So you wouldn't even imagine. So I was fascinated. It's truly amazing what the guys are doing there, and of course I cannot share many details due to NDAs, and most of the things we have seen there are protected by such agreements. But what I can tell, even down to the tiniest level, that now even the level of how much fuel is left in the reserves is reflected in game, that the acceleration and braking, and they are really mimicking the real world physics, and they are using that data they gather in the esports simulation to design the real world racing parts. And we will start with one particular use case, which I will share a bit more details about in the next couple of questions, if I remember correctly. But there is much more to be done, and there are many more use cases, which is a bridge towards the real world usage. And as I said, Alpine Esports is the perfect partner for this, because we get to enter this game to the whole car industry at the technology and digital level, which is the perfect spot to start. As I said, the Renault Nissan Mitsubishi Alliance is the greatest car alliance, so it's really up to us. If we succeed in building something really useful together with Alpine Esports, which is our shared goal, obviously, then we can move ahead. And like, if you're a chess player, you can't sit down with Kasparov. You have to prove that you're worthy. You have to prove that you can build solutions others can't. You have to prove that the solutions you bring to the table serve and give such benefits that it elevates you to the next level. And this is exactly what we are doing here, to go and build step by step super robust, super sustainable models which can be reused in higher and higher levels inside this ecosystem. So next question, what solution does the Alpine partner primarily want to use the blockchain for, or just the private or also public part? So our first use case together with Alpine would be something called proof of attendance, because Alpine Esports aims to advertise and also to make the sim racing more broadly available, and they really invest a lot of time, energy and money into making it more popular. And they want to combine this, that they might give benefits to the people who are physically present at these locations or physically participating in sim racing events. But this is a really, really challenging task to do if you think about it, because right now what most of these solutions are about, that they display a QR code somewhere at the venue, and then if you are there physically at the venue, then you scan that QR code with your phone, thus proving that you are being present at the location, and then you get some kind of reward. The problem with this approach is that it's really easy to fake, that you go to the events, you don't scan the QR code, you just take a picture of it, you send that to your friend or friends, because of course many people could scan the same QR code, and your friends who might be a couple thousand miles away, they can also claim those rewards which are supposed to be only claimable at the physical event, and so they are circumventing the system. Then there are some safeguards, like okay, they put geolocation, like checking the IP address, that at least you should be in the same city. Of course, this is again easy to circumvent with proxies. Then some use to use the GPS of the phone, that you scan the QR code and the phone will check the GPS location. These can be faked as well, relatively easily for the knowledgeable people in this area, that you can feed totally random GPS coordinates to the phone and it will report to the website that it's there where it actually isn't. So there aren't really rock solid solutions for this problem at present. And the problem with this is that as a reason, or for that reason, they can't give any serious rewards because they know that the system can be circumvented. So what we will first develop together is a proof of attendance system that really proves the physical location of someone being physically present at the event, which you cannot circumvent in any way or cheat in the system or otherwise fake your location. And this will enable Alpine to give those rewards to the people and only to those people who really deserve it. And as a result, of course, I can't speak for them, obviously, but if you were a company and you said that I'm willing to give out X value to the people who participate in something, but you know that it could be cheated, you would of course lower the reward. Now they could give much more valuable rewards to the very limited set of people who actually show up, being sure about that only those people get those rewards who are really meant to get those rewards. So this is a huge difference if you think about it. The next one. Oh, sorry, I didn't answer the second part of the question. So this solution, what I just described, would run on the private blockchain, but again, the hybrid model would connect the two together, because obviously we will roll out the private blockchain variant because that will be available sooner. But as soon as the private is, or as soon as the public is available as well, I think they would connect the two together to form a hybrid blockchain, because that's much more appealing for the data consistency. But this is of course Alpine's choice. We will make a recommendation, but we can't speak for them. Next question. What would you like to bring to the table personally in this partnership? And if you had a top 3 list of partnerships, who would you like or aim to partner with in the future? So personally, what I will bring to the table is that with all my creativity and all my heart, I will pursue to build something which gives the assurance to Alpine that they can really reach that goal they want to reach with this solution, what I just described. And yes, to design something which is truly unbreakable, so they can rest assured that only those limited number of people who actually deserve those rewards would be able to get them. So that's the answer for the first part of the question, what I would personally bring in this. And well, a top 3 list of partnerships, it's not about who the partner is or which industry they are. For example, I can talk for this example with Alpine. So we first met in Azerbaijan, Baku, and we immediately realized with Gilam, who is the head of Web3 at Alpine, that our minds just clicked, that he sees that how this space could be could be used for the good and actually to give benefits to these people and to build on top of a platform which is not owned by tech giants, but to build a truly fair and decentralized ecosystem for Alpine. And it's not a surprise that they are leading and they have the hugest customer base, so they are number one in the fan token category globally, not just among racing teams, I mean globally if you check that list. And it really reflects the energy and all the effort they have put into and all the mindset which we really share, how this community should be built. So back to the question, what is the top 3 list who I personally would like to partner with? My answer is that with partners like Alpine, who seek the better good, who seek the real possibilities of this infrastructure, to how to build things which you couldn't build or you couldn't build in a fair way on centralized systems. So it's really a pleasure to work together with them, and we are honored to have Alpine as our first partner. They are truly amazing guys. So next question, how many potential partnership is under the roof? Can we expect new deals in the next 3 months? Would be nice marketing move if one would appear on real F1 Formula 1 liveries like on Alpine F1 race car. Are you guys aiming marketing moves like this? So first, I can't really talk about the marketing targets, but I have some personal opinions about this this particular topic, and it's really that it requires exactly 0 talent to purchase stickers on a car, and this is also again a very important difference that I don't know whether I'm permitted to share this, but this is, how shall I phrase so everything is alright. So it's a different kind of partnership. It's not that we are paying money to buy stickers on an Alpine digital car. So it's we are blockchain suppliers. That's in the official documentation that's publicly available too. So it's really different to throw a bunch of money at a racing team and get a sticker on a car in return. And it's again very, very different to be a supplier and build solutions together and earn your way to get there. So the latter we do believe in, and just to burn money, because I personally, again, so this reflects my personal opinion, which shouldn't influence anyone in making decisions, but my personal opinion is that no one would buy anything because there's a sticker on a car. I personally would look into something if a company is interesting enough that it's a supplier of a Formula 1 team, for example, that they are building solutions together which add so much values and benefits for that other company that they are willing to showcase that in return. So these are two very, very different things, and again, in my opinion, one is just wasting money and the other is a proof of recognition of knowledge and talent and usefulness. So again, I personally would never consider putting stickers on cars for money just for the sake of marketing. I believe on building solutions which are marketable. So these are two very, very different things. So yes, for this question, again, this just reflects my personal opinion, not a public decision or anything official, but I would personally never go for just marketing expenditure just to put stickers here and there, you know. Next one. The POC that delayed the token relaunch was conducted for Alpine. If not, was it successful? So we had, and we still have one POC running. So with Alpine, we did infrastructure planning. That particular POC, which is still in the process, was not for Alpine. That's still being conducted in various testing environments, which is going well, but that is another company. And yes, about the successfulness, yeah, we have partial successes, but we are, again, the road is quite long ahead of us because there are several new environments in which we need to test. But yes, speaking about the token relaunch, let's move over to the next section because that is dedicated entirely to that. So why did we take the team, I guess, so this is formulated. So why did it take so long just for the relaunch of the token? Isn't that a sign of limited capacities to launch a much more complex quantum resistant full blockchain? Not at all. That's a sign of underestimating a task, actually, to be completely honest here, because when you take a look at it, there are two kinds of scenarios about the token relaunch, and I know all the details very well because I participated in designing all the scrapers which gather the data and how to feed that into the filtering systems. And I must tell you that we all know that blockchain is public, right? I mean, it's completely transparent. Anybody can see and inspect any kind of transaction. So it was just obvious to say that, well, let's scrape all the transactions which happened in that particular time frame, which we are inspecting and analyzing, and then we feed that to a relational database, make the filtering, how many purchases there were, how many sales, and and subtract one from the other, and we will have a list of how the relaunch process should be made. And let me tell you that there are so crazy kinds of transactions, and this is also the beauty of it. Is the Turing completeness, that you can really design any kind of smart contract. So we were amazed that there are scenarios where a wallet address, let's say called wallet A, starts a transaction where it would spend the tokens of wallet B on an exchange to sell or buy tokens, and the outcome would be transferred to token C, which would transfer the tokens to wallet D. So like a single transaction, 4 participants involved, you don't know who is who, you just see that the tokens are moving like this, and this is initiating the transaction, spending the other wallet's tokens to be transferred to a decentralized exchange, to get the outcome to a different wallet, to finally end up at a totally different destination. So in this pipeline, who would you compensate and why, and whom you wouldn't? And there were so many exotic use cases, and you are going, that we now cover this case as well, that case as well. And there were so many cases that finally, if I remember correctly, could automatically, so in an automatized way, cover like 98 point something % of all the cases altogether, and the rest are just unique and exotic ones, or happened in closed source smart contracts which we couldn't design any fair and automatic process for. So those people will probably need to open a support ticket, because it's literally, you can see it with your eyes what's happening inside the transaction. You just logically can't comprehend that who was the buyer here and who was the recipient and who gave the order. Logically, we can see it in code, we can see it with our own eyes. It's just hard to make a decision for them because we can't see the reality of what actual motivation was behind such exotic transactions. So it's definitely not a sign of limited capacities. It's rather a sign of professionalism and the aim for accuracy, I would say, because of course we have taken a look at how other projects have technically handled such situations, and it's really broad. There were just people who said that, okay, let's give out 50% to each wallet owner, they don't care. We want it to be fair as much possible and to operate based off data and evidence which is there, so there aren't any questions. And if anyone asks that why this much, then we can point to an exact transaction on the blockchain and tell them that yes, it's the amount because Div said this and that, and not just say because we think it's that much because of that. So I really supported this decision, and yeah, this was the outcome, the final choice, to go deep down into the rabbit hole, discover all the transactions, write the custom scrapers, and it was a lot of effort, much more than we initially expected, to be honest. But yes, now we sleep good at night, that all the transactions were handled and based on real facts, which we can pinpoint towards the blockchain. So I think that was the right way to go. The next question: the new contract address starts and ends with AAA. How was it generated safely to avoid previous incident? Thanks for doing due diligence and going with clean and through full contract to avoid security issues and doing multiple security reviews. I could answer this question, and the reality is that it's designed in a way that even if we use the previous wallet generation tool, which was proven to be vulnerable, there wouldn't be any issues either. So you can rest assured, as the 2 security audits also show, that it's perfectly fine. And my idea was, we will see whether this will be voted for and decided for, but I would really push it to start movement in the community, that whomever can, based on the smart contract and all the public information, who can describe why this contract address is not vulnerable in this particular use case. Of course, we didn't use the tool which was used previously, which was proven to be vulnerable. But even if we did use that tool, why couldn't any issues arise from that? And whoever is able to answer this question in a human language, because I think that's really what's needed in this space, because it's not that hard to figure it out. I mean, many people will be able to tell me why it's not vulnerable. But to find people who are able to comprehend and understand the fact that yes, of course it's not vulnerable, and are also capable of telling that in general human language, that's an expertise we are looking for. So if everything goes well, we will announce something related to that there will be like competition or something like that, where we are looking people who can the best describe and explain this to the general public. So yes, it's not vulnerable, but we will release the documentation and the facts later, hopefully based on the community's input. Next question: why did DEX trading start before TEX trading? So why did the decentralized exchange trading start before centralized exchange trading? Well, I participated in, as I said, gathering all the transaction data for the decentralized exchanges. Well, with centralized exchanges, there are centralized processes we cannot influence, so all the scraped data was passed to the centralized exchanges. There were communication issues, they stated different volumes, and yes, we had to come to an agreement, because luckily there is blockchain, so it is visible how many tokens were transferred in and out of a centralized exchange. But of course, since it's centralized, you have no ways to get any insights into what's happening inside the exchange. But of course, we wouldn't blindly believe any kind of data which is submitted to us, so we had to come to a common understanding about the actual trading volumes to make such a fair result there is for the decentralized exchanges. And I guess the reason was that the date was announced, so all the decentralized exchanges data was ready. We already submitted the data to the centralized exchanges. There were some business processes, I guess, which didn't finish in time. So this is why I always say that blockchain is a decentralized nature. We should use it like that, because of course there are many upsides and benefits of using a centralized exchange, and there are also downsides. Now, these are the downsides, things like this when they happen. So that's all I can say. So for decentralized trading, the the choice is ours. I mean, it's the choice of the users, the choice of the project, and there is nothing in between. In case of a centralized exchange, there is a centralized entity who is heavily involved in any kind of decision making, and these are one of the downsides of trading through those. But again, to be fair, there are many upsides as well. But to enjoy the upsides, we have to accept the downside. So it is what it is. Next question: what will happen with the unclaimed tokens? Well, will there be any unclaimed tokens? I mean, I'm not really seeing that anyone who had tokens before would decide not to claim them. So, to be honest, I personally didn't even think about this. We will see. I don't really see. I mean, I wouldn't understand why anyone would not claim their own tokens. The next question. Yeah, so why aren't previous holders compensated? So there seems to be an anomaly in this, because these particular questions, like why they are not receiving their tokens and why they are not compensated, came from Switzerland. So there seems to be some kind of misunderstanding going on, which needs to be uncovered. And it was approved that anyone from Switzerland who specifically has some compensation or not receiving tokens kind of question, they should write an email to support@quantplatform.com and put Switzerland in the subject field to see what's happening there. So we have no idea. The next section is about VCs. Hi, what is the status of VC funds after the hack? Can you tell us which VC funds have invested in Quannex? Yes, so which funds have invested, that's publicly available, so there weren't any rounds closed since then. And yes, after the hack we are still in active negotiations, and I must say that although I'm not that involved on the at that level, I can see that how many technical discussions there are with the CTOs, and I can tell that there is definitely interest in Quan. And of course the technical people can see that the issue and what the question is aimed at, that particular about the hack, that was just unavoidable. So projects handling more than $1 billion worth of LUG tokens, they also suffered from this issue. So there was literally no way to avoid that. And the interest of VCs haven't declined. And no, I cannot share any details until those deals are finalized. I can confirm that there are deals and negotiations actively going on. Next one, do you have a plan for the next fundraising so that we can speed up the technical and marketing progress? No, me personally, definitely not. What I can see that the technical development budget is approved for the next phase, so it's all good. The funding is there to finish the development, and for me, to be honest, that's all what I care about, to deliver the end product, which will be of value. So as I said in multiple previous Ask Me Anything sessions, this is the only thing I really care about, what I really believe in, and the rest will come. Next one is about the tokenomics. Concerning the tokenomics, I saw that reward staking represented 10% of the max supply and that the rest was already allocated. Then I was wondering how such a percentage could be enough in order to incentivize the validators after the mainnet launch until the date, at least in a few years, when transaction fees amount is high enough to cover a sustainable reward. How could you handle this without inflation, thus without changing the max supply of 3.3 billion and the tokenomics? So it's a great question, and what the question is missing though, that it assumes that only that 10% is available for incentivization and the transaction fees. It forgets about proof of randomness, and this is literally what answers the question, that from an external standpoint of view, this would be a correct question, that you see that there's 10% allocated for incentivizing the validators. Of course, there are the fees of each transaction in a block, but on top of that, there are also the burnt proof of randomness tickets. So never forget, when someone who has purchased proof of randomness tickets to participate in the validation, all those tickets which didn't win and the buyer didn't or couldn't extend the ticket validity because either they forgot, they don't want to, they can't afford it, for whatever reason they are not extending those tickets, those ticket prices go also into the pool, which will be allocated towards the validator. So this is an always growing and re-release. It's a circulating pool of rewards, and this is at the core of proof of randomness, which makes the system work. So next section, next steps, future plans. After mainnet, how are you planning to grow Quannex ecosystem? Are you relying purely on external developers, or is Quannex planning on launching their own dApps built on Quannex? So how we are planning to grow the ecosystem? Well, I truly believe that again, this groundbreaking feature, the smart contract royalties, will attract a massive developer base to Quan. So there are two important building blocks here. One is that if you are a developer, you can code in any language. Boom, welcome to Quan platform. You are able to build smart contracts immediately right from the start. Not much documentation reading needed. You already know the language. You can go ahead and build your contracts. This is one thing. So for all the other chains, 28 million developers are out there on this planet. Only 200,000 of them can write code in Solidity. So whereas for other blockchains, most of the other blockchains, only such a 0 point something % are capable of writing smart contracts, on Quan platform, all that 28 million developers are able to build immediately. So this is a huge difference. And also the other thing is that compared to other chains, here you get paid to do so. So if you have a great idea, like you would create the next token standard or whatever, all the next projects which reuse your code would pay the deployment fees or part of the deployment fees to you as the original author. So there is a huge step ahead, that we really lowered the entry barrier. So any kind of developer now is able to immediately enter the blockchain space. And also a financial motivation for the developers to write reusable libraries and code, which if others reuse them, they will get paid for that. So these are two game-changing parameters compared to any other blockchain. Next question, is Quan in talks with banks to be the front-runner blockchain for CBDC? What I can share is that we are in active talks with companies who are implementing CBDC solutions who intend to build on Quan. And unfortunately, I can't share nothing more at the moment. Will there be any future hackathons to develop on QVM? Yes, this is possible. There will be also hackathons for security testing, where the QVM will be tested for the determinism, and all kinds of other hackathons where you would be incentivized for building cool use cases on top of it. So it's definitely on the roadmap, but nothing concrete yet. And I think the best option would be to launch something after the private network is already launched. So the current layer 2 demonstration, what's already happening for QVM on the Ethereum testnet, is really for super early adopters, just to see how QVM works and get a proof that QVM is really working. When it will make real sense and when it can be used as a layer 1 execution engine will be with the release of the private network. So I think any plans like this, for the hackathons, will start after that. Next question. I saw that Binance is also partner of Alpine. When Binance? Favorite question of all times. So yes, of course, it's also great to be a partner of Alpine, because we meet many like-minded companies and representatives of them, and there might be fusions. Nothing concrete yet, so of course most likely we will meet also the Binance guys as we met all the other partners of Alpine, other suppliers, but of course this doesn't mean any guarantees. This means that most probably we will have discussions and we will see where it goes. That's all I can say for now. So let's go ahead to the next and last question as I see. What are exactly the next steps for the upcoming 1 to 3 months? What can we expect as a next small milestone which will also be announced in the official channels? Well, for the next phase, I mean for the first half this year, the main milestones would be that we would release QVM languages, so new languages which would be officially supported on a bi-weekly basis. We will also ship Librascan, definitely, the world's first decentralized blockchain explorer, which is super exciting. And also the best of all these, and what I'm really looking forward to, is of course release of the private blockchain, which will happen definitely first half of this year. So stay tuned to that, guys. We are really getting there. So, and that concludes my Ask Me Anything session as I see. Thank you very much for the great questions. I really enjoyed answering them, and thank you very much for being together with us on this journey. Thank you.